What's up, B2? Capital G here, looking out some brand new zombie support that just got revealed in the structure deck Our Undead World. You guys remember I did a video on some of the cards that were revealed earlier. The structure deck is actually looking quite nice, and I love the boss monster, Droshao. I think that it could be the best boss monster of the entire year. If you guys don't remember, Droshao is that big behemoth 2800 attacker that summons itself for free from the graveyard during the next standby phase as long as you have a field spell. I mean, mainly zombie world. And then it also has another effect where it can negate monster effects. It can banish a monster from your opponent's side of the field or from their graveyard. Such a fantastic utility card. Good for link summoning too, because it does continually special summon itself from the graveyard. But these are new cards, and again, we are getting the structure deck before the end of the year, so get hype, people. The first one is a card that Mermail players will definitely recognize because it's based off the little baby level 3 Synchro that Mermail players were so fond of. It's called Necro, and as soon as I saw that name and looked at the artwork, I was like, wait a minute, is that Tatsunoko, the little Mermail Synchro? You know, it's like a little seahorse. I think it's level 3. And it allows you to synchro summon using cards in your hand. This card is basically just a zombie version of that, and it kind of does the same exact thing. It's level 3 dark zombie tuner. Okay, so that's pretty cool so far. Obviously, some allure shenanigans are possible. 500 attack and 1700 defense. I knew it immediately. Those are Tatsunoko's stat line. That's his stat line basically in reverse, because it was something about that 1700. I was like, wait a minute, that sounds kind of familiar. And sure enough, it's the stat line of the Tatsunoko synchro monster just in reverse. It says if you would use this normal summon / set monster as material for a synchro summon, one monster in your hand can be used as one of the other synchro materials, but if it is, the other synchro materials are banished instead of being sent to the graveyard. It also has another effect that says you cannot special summon monsters except zombie monsters. I really don't feel like that's a back-breaking restriction. We have Vampire Sucker, that's a really good zombie link monster. We also have the Vendread link monster that just requires 2 zombies, and it can dump zombies from your deck to the graveyard. So, you know, those are still plays, but zombies are going to be getting more synchros, not just in this undead world, but I'm pretty sure Konami has further plans to support zombies with synchro. So I think that this is a pretty good effect, even though, let's just say you were using Necro and then one other monster from your hand to go into like one of your zombie synchro monsters. I don't really think it's that big of a deal that the monster does get banished, because you're not really committing too many resources from your field, and it's just a really nice utility effect. Next up, we have a really interesting zombie trap card, which, you know, it's kind of interesting because it's supposed to be like a recursion card, but under the right circumstances, it can actually be a pretty decent disruption card against your opponent. It's called Return of Zombie. It's a normal trap. It says you can use each of the effects amongst the first and second of this card's name only once per turn. So both of the effects can be activated in the same turn. You just can't use both of the effects more than once in that turn. So the first effect says banish one zombie monster on the field, then choose one zombie monster in the banished monster's controller's graveyard, and if you do, special summon it in defense position to its owner's field. Second effect says if this card is in your graveyard, you can shuffle one of your banished zombie monsters into your deck, and if you do, set this card but banish it when it leaves the field. So it's really nice the fact that you should be able to instantly get this card back like immediately. The most important thing you have to keep in mind is it says when you first activate this card on the first effect, banish one zombie on the field. This means that if you happen to have, I don't know, Zombie World on the field, all of your opponent's monsters become zombie as well. And that's why I talked about this card could possibly be a disruptive card, because essentially you can just you can banish any one of your opponent's monsters, and this card doesn't target. So I don't really know how your opponent is going to be able to respond. Let's just say your opponent had a situation where they're popping off with Gokis, or they're trying to pop off with Gokis. They summon that Firewall Dragon, and we all know what Firewall Dragon does for Gokis. You could banish that Firewall Dragon, and you could actually force them to get a different monster from their graveyard to summon on the field. And obviously that monster isn't going to be nearly as important as Firewall Dragon, especially because that card is actually limited to 1. So this could take care of one of your opponent's boss monsters at the cost of giving them a different monster from their graveyard. And luckily, if your opponent is in a situation where maybe they only have link monsters in their graveyard, they won't be able to special summon anything because link monsters can't be summoned in defense mode. Likewise, this card can also be used to facilitate your zombie play. plays, if you have a monster that has been targeted, you can easily give up that monster and then special summon a different monster from your graveyard. Maybe it's a monster that you want to be able to activate that monster's effect, or I don't know, maybe it's just something that, you know, just gives you another play that you wouldn't have had with the monster on the field. Like if your monster on the field had a hard once per turn effect and you've already gotten all of its use out of it. But I think that, man, I would have loved this card so much more if you always summoned from your graveyard. Like even if you gave up one of your opponent's monsters, if you banished one of theirs, if you got to summon a monster from your graveyard, like that just would have been nuts. It would have actually been very similar to, like, you know, kind of how Lair of Darkness works, where you're tributing your opponent's monsters but you're using your effects. It would have been similar to that. This card is somewhat like that, but they will actually be able to summon if you happen to use one of their monsters. But I think that the play breaking of it is still something that you can't disregard. However, you do need Zombie World on the field to even entertain that. If you don't have Zombie World, then I guess you're going to have to wait for your opponent to actually summon a zombie, which, I mean, that realistically, how often is that going to happen? This could probably be a one-up, because when you get this card, chances are you're going to activate it twice anyway. So not sure if you're going to really need that many more copies of it than just the one. The last card is actually the cover card. It's the new RedEyes Synchro monster. We knew of this card's existence, but we just didn't know what this card actually did. So this is RedEyes Zombie Necro Dragon. It's a level 7 dark zombie monster. Okay, it's a synchro, 2400 attack and 2000 defense. Now it is a completely generic card. It just requires one tuner plus one or more non-tuner monsters, so shout outs for that. The second effect is a hard once per turn. I think the first effect is incredibly underrated, and I think the first time I saw it, I was just like, oh, okay, that's kind of cute. But then I thought about it in the scope of Zombie World, and I was like, whoa, that effect is actually kind of impressive. It says it gains 1,000, or excuse me, not 1,000, that'd be broken. It gains 100 attack and defense for each zombie monster on the field and in the graveyards. That is incredible, because especially if you summon this card late game in you know, where you have Zombie World on the field, now you're talking about every single monster in either player's graveyard plus all monsters on the field. This card is basically gaining attack, or it's going to gain 100 attack for basically any monster anywhere that isn't in the hand or isn't banished. Like, that's incredible. Honestly, even if you summon this card like turn 2, chances are there's, you know, especially with us being in the Vrains era and how people link spam, chances are there's at least 3 monsters in your opponent's graveyard, maybe a couple in yours. That's like 5 monsters. There may be maybe 3-4 monsters on the field. You could easily drop this card turn 2 and have like plus 1,000 attack, which is very legitimate. I mean, maybe you summon it in defense mode. I don't know if that's going to happen, but this card could easily be a beat stick early in the game. The second effect says, when another zombie monster is destroyed by battle, you can special summon one zombie monster from either player's graveyard. This is another effect that I really think that I underestimated when I first looked at this card, because I thought about it and I was like, all right, well, if you have Zombie World on the field, all monsters become zombie, run over your opponent's monster, then Monster Reborn, well, you know, a monster from your graveyard or their graveyard is cute. It's basically like a better version of Goyo Guardian. But then I really thought about it and I was like, wait a minute, I don't even have to technically run something over on my opponent's side of the field, which obviously, well, most of the time that's only going to happen during your turn. If my opponent runs over any of my monsters, hell, even if I crash one of my little dudes into one of their bigger monsters, I can activate the effect, and it's a Monster Reborn. You get a monster from their graveyard or from your graveyard if you have Zombie World on the field, because again, all monsters at that point become zombies. I think that this is a really good effect, and honestly, if you happen to summon this card and it's like plus 1,000 attack, your opponent is probably going to be focused on getting your other monsters on the field, because this won't be the easiest thing to actually take down in battle. So if your opponent just starts randomly attacking your monsters, that might hurt them, because you might end up special summoning one of their boss monsters from their graveyard. Or even if you have another small monster on the field, like if you just normal summon, I don't know, Tatsa Necro, you can just ram it into one of their big dudes and then reborn something that's much more useful at that point. And that monster can be special summoned in attack mode, so the monster that you special summon can also attack. And that's really good, especially if it's during your battle phase, where, well, I guess it would have to be your battle phase, so what the hell am I talking about? And actually, I think my biggest gripe with this card, and I'll fully admit it is definitely nitpicking, is the fact that it's level 7, because I really wish it was level 8. Now, obviously, Konami was not going to make a level 8 just because of the continuity with all the other RedEyes monsters, like RedEyes Black Dragon, and all the other new versions of RedEyes and stuff like that. Hell, there's even another RedEyes Zombie Dragon that has the same stat line and the same level as this, but if this guy would have been level 8, it would have been so much better, or I'll say it would have been easier to make, because then, you know, you guys all know, especially if you're a zombie player, Shiranui Solitaire is basically a 1-card level 8 synchro when you combine it with Unizombie and zombies. That's why I say every zombie deck just ends up being Omega deck, because it's pretty much their best and most advantageous play. You turn your Shiranui Solitaire into an Omega. If you wait for your opponent's standby phase, you put the Mizuki back in your graveyard. You can still pick a card out of their hand in their main phase. It's such a fantastic play. There's really no reason to go for other synchro options there. But if this card does, or if you have another monster on the field, then Unizombie can actually give that monster a level, and then you can still go for this level 7 play. And that can be pretty good because it is a zombie. So even if you don't have Zombie World on the field, you still will be able to attack even with Unizombie's restrictions. But I think the zombie support it's pretty good. I don't think that there's any home run card. I think that we haven't surpassed that initial boss monster Droshaio. I don't know if Konami's ever going to top that when it comes to these cards, or really this structure deck in general. But you guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on that notification bell for daily videos.